Hello and welcome to the Nations League show. I'm Tom Mortlock. Over the next half an hour, my two guests and I will run through all the action that has culminated in England, Netherlands, Switzerland and Portugal becoming our semi-finalists. So sit back, relax and enjoy nothing but Nations League chat. Hello and welcome to the Nations League show. Joining me to discuss all things Nations League are Ben Carter and Tom Sandells. Thanks for joining us, gents. Before we look at our four semi-finalists, some of you may be wondering how this new international competition works. It has been its first running after all. And if that's you, luckily we have Ben here to get you up to speed.
Thanks, Tom. So, the Nations League was a brand new league system that was put into action at the end of 2018. This featured 55 European nations either fighting for European qualification or the Nations League title. Every team was split up into 4 separate groups based on their coefficient last year. Those groups were then split up into 4 leagues. Sides would face each other home and away until a top and a bottom team of each league is decided. The top 4 sides of groups B, C and D will be promoted to the higher division and replaced with the bottom sides of A, B and C. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The 4 winners of Group A, which are England, Switzerland, Portugal and the Netherlands, face each other in 2 semi-finals, a third place matchup and a final to be crowned the overall Nations League champion. The 16 winners or best placed teams in every league qualifies for European playoffs to compete for the final 4 Euro places. So gone are the days of standard friendlies. Now, with the Nations League, most international matches seem to have something on the line.
Great, thanks for that, Ben. Well, now we all know where we're up to. Let's crack on with looking at the first of our semi-finalists, which, of course, we're going to start with England. Tom's been looking at them for us. Firstly, what's England's route to the semi-finals through the group look like?
I mean, it didn't get off to the greatest of starts, losing 2-1 to Spain, although it could have ended differently with a soft free kick given against Sturridge in the last minute, which could have equalised. Then there was a 0-0 in Croatia, which was a strange one, a bit of a dead rubber because it was behind closed doors, so it was a bit of a strange one for the players to play in. England did hit the woodwork a few times, they did have the chances, and then it was on to a historic game against Spain, winning 3-2. I mean, a sensational first half from England, kind of blew the Spaniards out of the water, really, and they just couldn't muster up enough to claw it back. I mean, a 97th minute header from Sergio Ramos made the game look a lot closer than it perhaps was. I mean, ending 3-2 instead of 3-1, and then obviously the big game at the end against Croatia, where at that point, I mean, most teams could have ended up in the semi-finals. So, you know, a 2-1 win coming from behind with the only 2 goals that were scored in the second half throughout the whole of the Nations League for England, it showed a bit of character, and it showed that England, you know, are capable of coming and getting a result rather than just, you know, protecting one once they've got one from that quick start.
There's obviously been a lot of younger players coming through and vying for a place in that squad. So who are we expecting to feature? Yeah,
it's a good point you make. I'd say in the England squad there's probably only a core of about 15, 16 players, which is quite low for a national side. You're obviously going to have people like Kane, Ali, Sterling, Rashford, Stones, Pickford, all those, you know, the regulars in there. But, you know, there's also those young players that the country likes to get behind. There's Sancho abroad that's making a lot of headlines by the way he's playing it for Dortmund, and he was included in the last squad, but he could feature a lot more coming towards the summer and in the future years. You look at people like James Maddison again, who was recently included, who's still doing very well for Leicester. And another interesting one, it comes away from the young side a little bit, but Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain is still doing his recovery from a knee injury at Liverpool, and I'd say there's maybe a gap in that England midfield for when you see the likes of Dell filling in. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, if he comes back and picks up at Liverpool, he could well come into the squad for the summer.
And how do you assess the squad, Ben?
Yeah, similar sort of lines. I think that mobility that Oxlade-Chamberlain could bring could be huge. I think I'm really interested to see what they do in wide areas. So the left-hand side, sort of tried and trusted. We know what's going to go on with Rashford, and then maybe a little bit of a toss of a coin as to who's going to be at left back, but generally it's well known. But the right-hand side with the potential of Sancho and then Trent Alexander-Arnold at Liverpool, that's a really exciting partnership down that right-hand side, and we could see it for England for the next decade as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make there about the left back. I think there's an interesting conversation to have about the depth with England. I mean, if you look at left back, there's 3 potential left backs there. There's Chilwell, who's playing very well at Leicester. Luke Shaw is doing very well at Manchester United and keeping out of injury trouble as well. And there's also Danny Rose at Tottenham, all playing for very good clubs. But then at the other end of that, if you look beyond Harry Kane up front, I don't think there's a great deal to come in for him if you look at those regulars that have played up front for England in the past. Danny Welbeck's out long term, who's probably the only striker experienced playing up front for England. Sterling may go inside and that might free up Jadon Sancho. But then if you look who's currently been involved, Callum Wilson's probably the only one, and he's struggled with injury as he has for quite a while. So if Harry Kane does succumb to injury, there may be a bit of an issue, but it's one of those where if Harry Kane's fit, he's playing, he's going to play full game and he's going to captain the side. So.
And that's player-wise, but let's have a look at the manager a bit as well, Gareth Southgate. How responsible is he for the success, if we can call it that, in reaching 2 semi-finals that England have done? How much of a role has he played, do we think?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, do we call 2 semi-finals a success? With club football, I don't think we do, but I think the biggest thing that Southgate's done is he's brought the fans back on side. There's always been this stigma with fans in the English national team in years gone by, and probably in our generation there hasn't been that sort of level of connection with the national team that there is now. But everyone's behind the national team right now. We can really relate to the players. We can even relate to the manager. And you can see Southgate's passion on the touchline. It's infectious. And that's what fans thrive off.
I think that momentum could be really big for England. Like you say, there's that connection now between the fans and the team. You know, it was coming home in the summer, and all the players knew that. All the players were, you know, they were bringing out pictures and all this sort of stuff to go with it. And there's that connection now where the pressure's off. You know, they don't necessarily expect England to do a lot. Although we've reached 2 semi-finals, is it time to start expecting? But there's always that kind of. Southgate is very good at taking the pressure off his side, putting it back onto the opposition or even himself, and it's that kind of freedom that they play with that I think could be very fun to watch.
And Ben, you've been taking a look at Netherlands, who will be England's opponent in the semi-finals. Firstly, just tell us a bit about their journey from into the semi-final stage from the group stages.
Yeah, well, Tom was saying about England's group stage, and it was a pretty nasty group stage with Croatia and Spain there. But for Holland, a team who haven't qualified for the last 2 major tournaments, to come up against the last 2 winners of the World Cup, it doesn't get much harder than that. And things sort of went as we expected when they came up against France in the first game, losing to them. But then to win the next 2 games against Germany and France without conceding a goal as well, which is a very important point for Holland, that was really huge, and it turned the group on its head. And then went 2-0 down to Germany in the last game, but turned it around, a last-minute goal from Van Dijk, ensuring that they get to the UEFA Nations League semi-finals in Portugal.
Is this now them putting a stamp down and saying to the world, look, we are back as a national side, albeit with different players, more youthful talent coming through, but is this them saying, look, we're on an upward trajectory now?
Yeah, it certainly seems to look like that. I think anyone who's watched Holland can look at it and say, this probably is going to be their new golden generation. The likes of Arjen Robben, Van Persie, who have been the poster boys of Dutch football over the last decade, if not longer, they've been moved on, and now a new group of young players have come through. But it's not just young players who they're bringing through for the sake of it. These are players who already have experience at the highest level of club football. They've already won silverware. So they're maybe not world class yet, but certainly teetering on the levels of world class. And they're already playing for the national team as they are. An important thing with Holland as well, the last time they didn't qualify for the Euros, the next tournament that they did qualify for, they went on to win it. So who knows?
Give us a few names that you think will stand out for them.
Well, it's almost 2 and 2 in defence and midfield. So you've got Virgil van Dijk and Matthijs de Ligt at the back. An outstanding partnership. We know what Van Dijk's done from his time in the Premier League, how he's transformed Liverpool. But Matthijs de Ligt, still a teenager, but he's making headlines everywhere, and that's a fascinating partnership. And when you look in midfield, again another Liverpool player, Gini Wijnaldum, he brings what he does at Liverpool into Ronald Koeman's side. He brings that energy, he brings that pressing, and it's horrible for teams to come up against. And when you bring him up against the person who he's sitting next to, who I know, Tommy, you've been looking at, Frenkie de Jong, just moved to Barcelona. It's a devastating combination.
Yeah, I think it could be a very big stage for him. It could be very important for him. Obviously, he's just got this dream move to Barcelona. He's like England on the bit of a crest of the waves, coming into it with a lot of momentum. And I think this could be a really important stage for him to kind of say, look, I'm a Barcelona player. These are the kind of games I want to be playing in. He's obviously played in the Champions League, as has De Ligt, and I think that's very important for them. But it's a great opportunity for kind of take the game by the scruff of the neck. He's the type of player that likes to dictate tempo and kind of pass the ball around, and he can do that very well. I also think it's worth pointing out that Memphis Depay up front has been brilliant for them, getting the goals, and he's a threat all over the pitch. He's a threat coming in from the left or the right, playing centrally and from dead balls.
Right, well, before we move it on, we'll have some predictions from you. Ben, involved with that, do you think that England will struggle against Netherlands, perhaps?
Yeah, I think they will. I think this combination of styles of play, it's difficult for any team to come up against. It's always nice when you come up against someone and you know how they're going to play, so you can then counteract that with your own tactics. But this, sort of combining possession play with that counter-pressing, which they do so well, it's going to be a handful for England, but they probably still have enough quality, England. I think Holland showed signs during the group stages that they're quite weak in wide areas, and that's one of the strengths of England. So I probably fancy England for this one.
And Tom?
Yeah, I think the wings will be vital. I think the way England play, especially when you come up against Spain, you come up against that very good back line. You come up against Van Dijk and De Ligt. They may play into Kane and play off him very quickly like they have done in the past. They'll look for Sterling and Rashford out wide and try and cause problems in behind to get Kane the ball around the box, and we all know how lethal he is around there. So I think if that goes into England's hands and it plays the way that they may want it to, then I think England could edge it.
Well, we've reached half time. That's it for part one, but stay tuned because after the break we'll discuss Switzerland's remarkable journey to the semi-finals and their opponents, a revitalised Portugal. We'll see you in a few minutes. Welcome back to the Nations League show. We have another intriguing matchup to go over now, as Switzerland have defied a lot of people's expectations by making it to the semi-finals, but they come up against a Portugal side that many would consider a heavy favourite for the tournament. So Ben, of course, European Championship winners in 2016, not such a good World Cup for Portugal, but are they the side that are the favourites for this game against Switzerland? Not only that, but also the tournament as a whole potentially.
Yeah, I think it's easy to look at them when you look at what they did at Euro 2016 and say they are going to be the favourites, like you say, for the whole tournament, not just against Switzerland. But they only won one game in 90 minutes when they were over in France. Yes, they went on to win it, but they weren't really that convincing on their journey to actually lifting the trophy. And then at the World Cup, it almost seemed to be Ronaldo or no one at the World Cup for Portugal. Obviously, that isn't going to be an option this time. But they're an interesting squad. It's certainly too early to call them favourites, but also there's a risk of people underestimating them as well.
And what does their passage through the group stages of the Nations League look like?
Well, they've arguably been in one of the most interesting groups out of the entire thing. So they had Italy and Poland, two fascinating teams. Portugal beat Italy in the opening game, which I'm not sure many people were expecting them to do. And then it was that game away in Poland, which was probably the defining moment for them, a 3-2 win. Then 2 0-0 draws to wrap up the group stages and to book their place at their own tournament.
And you mentioned Ronaldo. It's been a bit of a changing of the guard for this Portuguese national team. He's now not as much involved and hasn't been since that World Cup. Is this a new era, a new youthful era for this Portuguese national side?
Yeah, it certainly seems like that. It seems to have gone under the radar, unlike Netherlands, how that's really been publicised, how this new golden generation is coming through. It's something similar at Portugal. It's probably happened a little bit earlier than we were expecting with Ronaldo being moved out of the side, but they've gone unbeaten without Cristiano Ronaldo in the team. And overall, they're looking like a much better, much more cohesive squad. It's almost the opposite of what we've seen at Juventus since Ronaldo's joined, where now Juve are having to build around Cristiano Ronaldo, as you have to do when you've got Ronaldo in your squad. But without him at Portugal, it's sort of freed up other players to come and take a starring role, and they just look a lot better as a team.
And Tom, of course, the semi-finals and finals of this Nations League being played in Portugal, so do you think home advantage will prove crucial for Portugal?
I think it can be massive, yeah. I mean, if you look at the last time Portugal played a major European tournament at home, it was in 2004 and they reached the final. You look at France in 2016, they reached the final. So I think it can be a really big lift for the side. And Cristiano Ronaldo hasn't officially announced his retirement, so there's every chance he could come back. He likes a little fairy tale story, and he could return for the semi-final and the final in his home country. So I think with all these factors combined, it could really give the team a lot of momentum going into these huge games.
And what about potential weaknesses for Portugal that Switzerland will look to exploit? What have we seen there?
Yeah, I think the centre halves are probably the weakest area of Portuguese, the Portuguese side. I think if you look at, they do have a lot of elder statesmen in there. They've got the likes of Jose Font and Pepe, who are, you know, mid-30s, which is quite old. Especially, you know, maybe defenders get a bit more leeway, but I still think that's quite old. And Switzerland play a very direct style of football. They like to commit men. They like to make things happen. So I think that they might struggle in that respect. But also, without Ronaldo, without that focal point, without everything going through him, the goals have been a lot spread out. Andre Silva having 3. But if you look, own goals being prolific in second place in the top scoring ranks for Portugal. So, and that's with 1. So I think if Andre Silva's on a bad game, for example, you know, where may the goals come from if Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't make his return?
And before we move on quickly, Ben, some strengths to counteract that for Portugal?
Yeah, so they've been very interesting going forward, even though the goals aren't spread out, even though Andre Silva's had to burden that, which in a way is a positive for them, that they've been able to find that direct replacement for Ronaldo. Andre Silva's being included in the squad frees up so much space for Bernardo Silva and Pizzi of Benfica to really do what they do best in the final third, in between the lines, causing defenders all sorts of problems.
Okay, great. Well, moving on to Switzerland then, the opposition for Portugal. Tom's been looking at them for us. A lot of people might say, well, this is clearly an easy opposition for Portugal on paper, of the weakest of the teams that have made the semi-finals. I have a feeling you don't necessarily agree with that, though.
Yeah, I can't help but smile. I mean, if you think they're easy opposition, I'd go and ask Belgium about that. I mean, 5-2 to get yourselves to the semi-finals. That's pretty emphatic to say. You know, we're no whipping boys here. They started off very well. They beat Iceland 6-0. And Iceland obviously caused a lot of upsets in recent years. They're a respected team around Europe now. And then they got beat by Belgium in the second game, 2-1. And you kind of think at that point, oh, is this kind of the hierarchy of the group kind of making itself known? They recovered from that, went and beat Iceland 2-1 away. And then that final game, I mean, Belgium and Switzerland both finished on 9 points. So that final game was massive. That's what got them through. They went 2-0 down and showed great character to come back and essentially blow Belgium away. I mean, Seferovic got a hat-trick in that game, and I think he'll be very important for the side in the next 2 games as well. And
in terms of their style of play, how have they gone about getting through that group? Again, Belgium, very strong team, and wouldn't have expected them to do that. So how have they adapted in games in order to power through and come out on top? Yeah, they've been very adaptive in their games. They've used 3 formations across the 4 games. They started off in a 4-2-3-1 against Iceland, and obviously it worked very well, winning 6-0. They went to 3 at the back against Belgium, and it didn't quite work for them. They stuck with the flat back 4 in the rest of the games, and obviously they came out on top. So they're a very adaptive side. They're willing to use different systems, and they get results through that as well. They've got a clear focal point up front, and they like to be direct. They've got the likes of Xhaka, who can control possession. They had more possession in every single one of their games, despite losing against Belgium. So they're not a type that wants to be direct and make things happen, but go from front to back quickly. They're willing to play the ball with possession and keep it. And with Xhaka in the midfield, he'll be key to that. But also you've got the likes of Shaqiri, who obviously we'll know very well from playing in the Premier League. They're capable of some very special things. We saw an overhead kick in a major tournament not long ago. So we know what he's capable of. And also from set pieces, they've been very dangerous. So they're a very adaptive style. They can be quite unpredictable, and you don't always know what you're necessarily going to get on the day from Switzerland. So no reason for Portugal to underestimate the Switzerland side. But Ben, do you think that there's a chance they could be complacent? Of course, they could have had a stronger opposition on paper in this draw.
I think there's, certainly with the track record that we've seen with Switzerland, you do generally see teams come and underestimate them, and that's always played into Switzerland's advantage. They like being the underdogs, and they like proving to the European big dogs, look, we deserve to be here. I think maybe after the group stages, after what happened with Belgium, like Tom was talking about, I'd be very surprised if anyone was going to be underestimating them now.
It's an interesting scenario because Portugal often as well are fairly underestimated. You see a lot in the major tournaments that they're always that kind of dark horse, that little outsider away from the main pack, but they always turn up in these big tournaments. And I think you can say the same of Switzerland more often than not. They're very consistently getting to knockout stages, and they've gone one better essentially this time by getting through the groups to the latter stages of the competition. So I think it could be a really interesting game.
And what do we think is going to happen then, predictions-wise for this one? What do we think, Ben, first?
It's going to be a close one, but I think Portugal, without the get-out-of-jail free card in Ronaldo, I think I'd fancy Switzerland just about to edge it.
Okay, and Tom?
I'll go with home field advantage. Maybe we should have swapped teams here. With home field advantage, I think I'll go Portugal, especially if Ronaldo comes back.
Okay, well, there we are. So a bit of a disagreement there. We like that bit of competition. So we've looked at our 4 semi-finalists then. Let's move on to the all-important question of this tournament as a whole. Do we think, of course, the first running of it, so do we think that it's been a success on the whole? Ben first?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think it's been hugely successful. I think whenever you introduce something like this, it sort of disrupted what everyone's used to with football. This sort of new competitive thing with the 2-week breaks for internationals. It's a little bit confusing at first, but it's been fascinating. I think even people who are normally firmly against international football have been glued to TV screens during international breaks because there is this competitive edge. There is things to play for, and we've seen it with England's group. We saw it with Netherlands' group as well, with things going down to the wire, going down to that last day, and it's been absolutely fascinating to keep up with.
I think it raises the stakes of international football, which I think is important. There's always that kind of lull of competitive action between the major tournaments and qualifying in generally you'll get those thrashings of the minor teams and the teams where it may even have part-time players, which is great. It's a great occasion for the smaller teams, but it lacks that competitive edge. And I think bringing in the Nations League and providing a league table with the stakes, I think it's very important as well. We've not lost the friendlies. We're still getting new players into national teams. We've still got these low-risk scenarios where they can come into friendlies, get used to the setup. But we also have those important games that kind of brings a bit more emphasis to the national team. And
what about the format, of course? 4 leagues, how have we made the division, the promotion and relegation aspect that's increased the competitive edge that there's been involved?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like I was saying then, it just raises the stakes that little bit more. You know, if going into the final game of England's groups, all teams could go up and down pretty much. You know, it creates more of a spectacle. You know, there's more. You always look towards the end of seasons and you think, oh, who could go down, who could go up, all the permutations and things. And there was all that in the build-up to the ends of the groups in the Nations League as well. And I think it can only be a good thing.
Very quickly, I'm going to put you on the spot before we finish. Who's going to win the overall tournament, firstly, Ben?
I think it's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be close, but England.
Tom?
I'll go England without Ronaldo. If Ronaldo comes back with the home field advantage again, I think Portugal might edge it.
Oh, we like a little permutation there so that you can get out of jail free card. Well, that has brought us to the end. We could probably talk about it all night, but unfortunately we have to wrap it up there. Thank you to my guests, Ben and Tom, for joining me and offering their insight. And thank you to you at home as well for watching. We hope that's whet your appetite for the Nations League final stages in June. It was a semi-final disappointment for England at the World Cup last summer, but can Gareth Southgate's side go one better in their bid for European glory or even win the competition? From all of us here, good night.